Hey guys, it's M. And today I wanted to talk about a game I just bumped into, Kletka. I'd seen this game before when people like RDC and Markiplier played it. I sort of wrote it off as a lethal-like that's not coming to console anytime soon, then never really thought about it again. Cut the current year and it's on PS5 after its official release. When I saw it on the store, the trailer admittedly caught me off guard. Seeing the guy driving around shooting guns and stuff was not what I remembered the game being, but I was still curious enough to not be scared away. Hell, the last game I got because I thought it'd be like Lethal was Outlast Trials, which ended up becoming one of my favorite games, so I got this one and we have a lot to talk about, as this game has me hooked and also kinda conflicted on some things. Just to get the simple ground stuff out of the way, your goal is to make it to the 100th floor of the gigastructure and kill the final boss. These floors are all run down and surreal, a place that doesn't make any logical sense. One moment you're in a jail, the next you're in a greenhouse 60 floors down where you can see the sky. And that's not including the anomaly floors, which are references to other pieces of fiction, or the cursed floors where you might run into places with no gravity, or they're in exclusively black and white. All this while you're in a monstrous elevator known as the Kletka. And you have to make sure it's taken care of to make it to that 100 floor depth. You need to feed it, fuel it, and fix it, which means your primary objective when you're out on these floors is to find fuel, wrenches, and food, alongside weapons. Sure, the main focus is getting the three things I mentioned, but there are things that occupy these floors that normally aren't too happy that you're there with them. Can't even perfectly prepare for specific threats as these floors are randomized, as are the threats on them. So in many cases, something's after you while you're looking for supplies and you'll need to learn how to defend yourself or run away. They have a good chunk of melee weapons and guns, but both of them have very limited durability and ammo, so you have to use those scarcely. It leads to the fact that while there is combat, a lot of times you might want to take things on tactically instead of just ramming into them. And what else reinforces the idea of taking this game tactically? The traps. The floors also have mines and tripwires all over the place. Even on just normal difficulty, there's quite a lot of them. And they do massive damage to you. Out of your 100 health, normally you'll take about 40 damage if you step on a mine. But if you notice a mine and have a wrench, you can pick it up out of the ground and use it somewhere else, like on a breakable wall. Or maybe you just want the mine out of the way, so you'll throw one of your items or bottles on it to set it off, or hold it down. You see, while at first it seems simple to just run around, grab things, and dip, this adds another layer of depth to your runs, as you have to make sure not to biff it just because you weren't paying attention. Maybe you'll run into a door you could have opened with a mine, but since you set off all the nearby ones, you're gonna have to just leave it. Things like that. All this together leads to a very interesting gameplay loop. You don't necessarily need to stop the Kletka unless you're out of supplies or materials, so you could try to scour these floors until you're overstocked, but that could lead to you dying from the enemies or traps on those said floors and losing your entire run. You could try to skip as many floors as possible, but that could lead to the Kletka breaking down, or just straight up eating you because you didn't tend to it. I like it. At times it can force tense situations where you don't have any weapons or you're just generally in a bad way, but you have to go get that food for the Kletka or some gas to avoid a game over. It's pretty unique. I think the atmosphere here is amazing most of the time. The gigastructure's floors are creepy, dark, and often claustrophobic. Even just looking at footage of it, you can see this is a cold, unfeeling place. Rundown locations where life should be, but what remains are these weird creatures. The music really helps push this uneasy feeling too. They only save the action-packed tracks for when you break away from the standard exploration. They tend to be slow, quiet, and let you take in what you're looking at. It's why the trailer showing the characters shooting guns and having a great time caught me off guard, because most of the time you're going through these super atmospheric areas. I can't speak for the multiplayer as I haven't seriously played this game with anyone yet, but in single player, it's very easy to get immersed into this world and accept you're this little guy at the bottom of the food chain. The Kletka, despite it being a giant mouth in the ceiling that can eat you, is pretty easy to get attached to. Sure, he's not exactly a looker or a very talkative type, but when it comes down to it, it's you and him versus everything else down here. I really can't put into words how great this game does these things enough, and I feel you really need to play this game to fully absorb it. I'm saying all this because I may be a bit critical in this next segment. Notice I said most of the time and not all the time for the atmosphere. At the moment, there's 3 main sectors you go through. The first 2 will be selected from a pool of, well, 2. There's residential and prison for the first 2, then there's the greenhouse and the factory for the second. The third will always remain the same as of now, the flesh mines. The greenhouse shatters this claustrophobic tense nature the rest of the game builds up, and I think it's an odd choice. Not bad, but weird. Sure, you could get anomaly floors which could be goofy and break the tension, but that would be more of a quick distraction before jumping back in. The greenhouse is a huge, bright, open world-like area where you get a car you can drive around with. There are some enemies here, but they won't be in tight corridors where they might end up right in front of you or blocking a path you need to go toward. They'll just be in an open field where you can easily avoid them. It's not that it isn't fun or not a nice change of pace. I'm not even saying it doesn't come with challenges, as I often struggled to find as much here as I did in the more atmospheric tight floors, but it straight up just doesn't match any of the other main zones. Surreal and cool set piece, sure, but not really spooky. The enemies here are possessed cars that try to ram you or run you over. There's also a B with, unironically, one of the best tracks I've heard in a while. This theme doesn't belong to a boss, by the way. He's not even particularly strong. They just randomly chose to give this be a banger just because, it seems. Speaking of tracks, the music shifts here too. It's often even dynamic for when you step into the car. It gives a more laid-back adventure vibe, but trust me, this greenhouse segment isn't the only thing like this. This game has a good handful of bosses. Before swapping areas, one of these will be in your way. Initially, I didn't like the thought of bosses in a game like this, but they force you to actually stock up on weapons or heals, so I warmed up to them a bit in concept. In execution, well, Spudling is a giant head that breaks off into smaller heads that throw potatoes at you. You fight him in a farm in space, and he's got a really cool techno beat in the back. Yes, obviously I'd say he breaks the tension set up before, but my main problem with him and underlying for many of the bosses is how you beat them. The game will consistently give you things to defeat said bosses. For instance, Spudling's potatoes can be thrown back at him. This is a very good thing, as getting shafted by not having weapons here would be very annoying, but Spudling's potatoes seem pretty random with their spawns. Sometimes there will be a ton of them around, and other times it feels like you have nothing to work with, so you end up just running around until you can find them. Regardless, we have to talk about the others. The Mother of Concrete is a huge worm. The way you defeat her is when she's facing you, you pop a mine into her mouth, or you time it so it hits her belly. She's probably the most setting-friendly boss, and aside from the fact that she'll damn near one-shot you if she catches you, she's probably my favorite. A very simple but efficient boss. Then we get to Rust Bucket. Rust Bucket is a possessed car that functions just like the other cars. He'll try to ram you and run you over. He's my least favorite because he's just not great mechanically. His only tactic is to try to ram you. What makes him unique is that he has spikes in the back and the front of the car, so you can't hit him from those sides. But to compensate, he'll stall from time to time. This is your chance to hit him. Should your car break down or you just not want to use it, he'll drop mines you can hit him with in this state. My issue is he's not coded well. He'll bump into dang near every single thing in the map. I don't think he's ever actually hit me. I've seen him get stuck every single time I've gone against him. The stalling window would be nice against a super insane boss you can barely track, but against Klutzy here, it makes him even weaker. It's a shame because they have these ramps around, like you're meant to be driving around, jumping everywhere, and putting on a real spectacle. But in reality, the fight will often result in him getting stuck somewhere and you ramming into his side over and over again, or just waiting for the mine to come out while you easily avoid it. I would bring up the assembly fly boss, however, in my only run where I got him, I was stocked up, so I pretty much just blasted him to death before I could see much of his moveset. But from what I did see, he's fine. The final bosses in the brain and the heart of the gigastructure are, To preface for both of them, I like their settings and their themes, as again, they dip into the surreal and show what abomination could be making this structure. But let's dig into it gameplay-wise. The brain spawns enemies around and you smack some goo on the walls until you can hit it and kill it. It works, but it's not a super crazy fight to remember or anything. The same with the heart. The heart is invincible until the chains around it are broken. The only way to break these chains is to wait for it to spit acid on you while you're standing on the chain. After they're all broken, you just blast it away with the guns that spawn around in the area. The heart doesn't have any crazy moves or anything to counter you while you're doing this, as it just spawns enemies similar to the brain does. They're pretty easy to avoid, so you basically just sit a good distance and then start railing the thing. The best descriptor I can use for the bosses here is underwhelming. They don't feel mechanically hard to deal with. I wouldn't say they're bad to the point I groan when thinking about them or they stop me from playing the game, but often I don't feel, well, anything towards them at all aside from liking their designs and themes. Worst part is, other than potentially making Spudling's potatoes spawn a bit faster, I don't have much to say to fix my issues with them. You could make a fight like Rust Bucket have perfect pathing, not bump into anything, and feel like you're actually running from a rogue sports car, but you're not exactly a movement shooter pro tag or anything. You're fast, sure, but you're still just a guy. If they overtune these bosses and make them more mechanically challenging, you risk the player potentially getting 60 floors deep and then getting pummeled by some random goon who's acting like a Dark Souls boss. It's a messy scenario. The enemies here are fascinating. While it'd be easy to have everything be flat out hostile towards you, it's not so black and white here. Sure, you have the average monsters that have stronger variants, but you also have quite a few critters around here that makes things more complicated. Gretchens, for instance, are these weird little hunchback guys that won't attack you. They scurry around the map and then will just return to their little homes. They're pretty much harmless. They might as well be little filler fellas like rats or eye rollers. But the things that can actually harm you aren't even all on the same side. Sure, there's plenty of mutants down here, but quite a few humans remain here as well. We have mimics who oftentimes won't attack you and will just follow you around, but others like igniters or wardens will just gun you down on sight. When I started playing, I assumed the mutants and the madmen were on the same team. That would be the easiest thing to code, but oftentimes you'll see infighting between them. It leads to occasions where you can lead a monster into a human enemy and then run away, letting the two fight it out. But there's also times where you'll just find a member of the two groups dead, and most likely whatever killed them isn't super far away. It makes the world feel organic, and that there's more going on than just you going down the floors. This isn't going to be a negative heel turn of the video, just if the devs ever do see this, I'd like to see some small things change or potentially added in the future. Excluding the bosses point, because we've already covered that. To start easy, I'd like to see some more zones and some more randomized rooms within those zones. While I love what we currently have, I feel you oftentimes run into the same rooms pretty often. And given you spend 30 floors on the same zone, it'd be nice to have a bit more variety in that regard. And as for the 3 potential zones per game section, I feel like that would be a nice number to land on, giving every run quite a few options to mix from, but not being so much that it's an insane ask. I imagine the devs are probably working on both of these things anyways, but I wanted to throw them in regardless. Next would be the tools. I think the wrench is a fully utilized tool, with it repairing the Kletka, being used for mines, undoing power boxes, etc. But the others don't really have that multi-layered helpfulness to them, and some things that I imagine would be tools like the crowbar just aren't. I'd love to see some of these items touched up on. Now I'm going to spitball some of the ones I thought of while playing. Let's start with the crowbar, given I've already mentioned it. I imagined it be used to pry things open like locked safes, locker doors, or even the fuse boxes with an interaction. Many of these things you can simply whack open with it, but it'd be nice if by hitting interact, you could open these things and it costs less durability than it would with other weapons. The handcuffs are nigh useless unless you're messing around with a friend. It'd be nice if through the interact key you could use it on human enemies, if not completely neutralize the threat, at the very least disable them for a bit and force them to work out of it, like players and enemies have to do with bear traps. There's already not that many human enemies as is, and I think this would make it an interesting one-use item. The megaphone is used that players can hear you further, but I think it'd be cool if by hitting the interact button, you could make a loud noise that would draw monsters' attention towards you. It'd be a cool multiplayer tool so your friends could get by, and in single player, it could be used to draw the monsters away from certain locations. I think it'd be neat if Shanks and the Ronin did more damage to bodies, so you'd have to use overall less durability than the other weapons did, making it represent something like harvesting the monsters and giving these already pretty rare items another purpose. The car is pretty fun to toy around with. You can even use your upgrade cogs on it to spruce it up a bit more. My problem with that is, in a normal playthrough, you'll eventually get past the greenhouse floors, and all of the upgrades you used on the car suddenly don't matter. This isn't a problem on Endless, given it can always come back into rotation, but in a normal run, the player doesn't have much incentive to upgrade the thing. Let alone the upgrades individually don't feel big enough to warrant doing this in the first place. My suggestion would be on normal and turbo structure runs, once you get past the floors it matters on, the gears will be spat out by the Kletka, while still giving it a give and take nature for those 30 floors or so. So now the player can still choose between upgrading the elevator or the car, and it carries weight for the greenhouse section, but afterwards they aren't left with just nothing. The other suggestion would be that the car upgrades just do more quicker. Like maybe every upgrade now would be bumped up to the stats it would have every 2 upgrades. This way you would get stronger, more visible results. The next thing I'm going to mention I think just needs to be reworded. The swags or cigarettes went completely unused by me, as the wording -8 max HP plus 4 HP made it seem like it was going to permanently shave off 8% to heal me at the moment. It sounded like a give and take sort of thing. So I avoided it until around my 3rd run, where I rationalized because my health was so low, taking a bit off the top would be a good trade. Come to find out, it only takes 8% of your HP for a moment before giving it back. I can't imagine I'm the only one who was confused by this wording, and it'd be neat if the devs put a parentheses temporary or something. I do really like this game, if you couldn't tell. It's a lot different than what I imagined it'd be, but it's definitely my favorite of whatever you'd call this genre. The atmosphere, the soundtrack, it's unmatched in what it goes for in my opinion, and feels like a great game that will only get better with time. While I was working on this, the Singularity update dropped, and I think that's a good sign of things to come yet with this game, and that it'll have a good lifespan. It goes without saying, but if anything I mentioned here interests you, I'd really recommend you give it a shot. It's a simple and short game, but it requires a lot of strategy and forethought if you want to get really good at it. Even after your straight addiction wears off, where you may run it again and again and again, I could see this being a game you pop on to do a run or two, and just semi-frequently check in on what's happening or what's changed, with a quick fun run. Regardless, I've been talking a lot. What do you guys think? As always, as long as you're respectful, I'm glad to discuss with you in the comments, and I've been M, and I am out.